These are the new metal releases for October 11th, 2024. I have 6 albums to talk about. I have a big mix. I have some alternative metal, classic thrash, death metal, sludge metal, noise rock, heavy metal, hard rock, all of that. Some of these are older bands, some are newer bands, some are making a comeback, some are side projects, and some modern bands. So let me get into this. The first band I have is Ad Infinitum. The name of the album is Abyss. They're a Swiss and German metal band. They were symphonic in the beginning, but then they kind of changed on this album. So they're starting to move towards a pop and metalcore sound, something more along the lines on Bring Me the Horizon. And I'll explain as I go through the songs. This band is a really talented singer. Her name is Melissa Bonney. And the first 3 albums were a series of albums that were tied together. They were Chapter 1 Monarchy, Chapter 2 Legacy, and Chapter 3 Downfall. I reviewed the last album, Chapter 3, on this channel. This album seems to be a completely new story. It's just titled Abyss. And new name means new sound. The opening track is called My Halo. Immediately you have some modern pop sounding electronic sounds with Melissa Bonney singing the first part of the song. Song still has some heavy guitars, but there are also lots of those electronic sounds. Songs also have big hooks and sing-alongable choruses. She also does some deep guttural vocals in the song, so they haven't completely gone soft. One of the singles was called Follow Me Down. This one has a heavier metalcore sound with some electronics. The song has a music video, which is them just playing the song. It's a performance. The song's not too bad, and it's one of the heavier tracks, but it was still composed like a pop song. Then there was the other single called Outer Space, and they have a music video for this one. This one starts off very heavy, but then it goes in more of a commercial direction. Melissa Bonney does a mix of the clean and harsh vocals. The song also had some softer sections as well. Then another song called Aftermath, and this one had more of those heavy metalcore style riffs and some softer vocals. Then there was a song called Euphoria. This was probably the most pop sounding song that had softer singing and more electronics and less guitars. On the plus side, it had a nice bass guitar sound. The guitar solo was also very melodic in this one, and it sounded okay. After this was a song called Surrender. It started off like a typical pop song, but then after a minute it gets very heavy. So it was like a mix of pop and like deathcore. So it kind of had those 2 extremes. There was a track called Anthem for the Broken, which had kind of a laid-back sound. I like the guitar solo in this one. And then another track called The One You'll Hold On To. And I felt it was one of the more metalcore sounding tracks in the album with big and heavy guitar riffs. And the last song is called Dead End. It had some thick and chunky guitar riffs, some of those like big state-of-the-art like technical electronics, and the melodic vocals of Melissa Bonney. Overall, I have mixed feelings about this. I think they're changing their sound a lot, but I don't hate it. I think for me, it's a 7.5 out of 10. I think I like their previous album better, and I enjoy like their symphonic style a little more, but this still works. Melissa Bonney is really one of the best female vocalists in metal. So with that being said, I think it's worth checking out. This is the band Nasty Savage with Jeopardy Room. They are a thrash band from Florida. They formed in 1983 by vocalist Nasty Ronnie Gaglietti, and the band has undergone various lineup changes, with Gaglietti and guitarist David Austin being the only constant members until the latter's departure in 2022. They were also very influential on the Florida death metal scene. 2 bands who were largely influential from them were Death and Obituary. So they're this old school band. They've been around a long time. Very influential band. And also Obituary also appears on one of the songs of the album. I'll talk about that in a minute. The band released a few albums in the 80s. They took a long break, and they released an album in 2004. And now 20 years later, they're releasing another album. This is one of those bands that's a mix of thrash and heavy metal. They're very 80s sounding. The vocals are cleaner than a typical thrash metal band. I think a good comparison would be the band Malaya Rage, if you've ever heard of them, or maybe even Metal Church. It's kind of like this hybrid thrash and heavy metal. This album starts with a short instrumental called Invocations. It goes into the fast and heavy thrash metal song called the Jeopardy Room. I could even hear a few guitar riffs that sounded a bit like old school death metal. After this is a song called Brainwasher. The song has some slow and heavy guitar riffs with some melodic lead guitar playing. After this is a song called Southern Fried Homicide. This one has one of those intros with the clean arpeggiated guitar riffs, and that's something common with old school thrash bands. This is a mid-paced thrasher, and I like the song because it's kind of easy to follow along and listen to the lyrics, so that's something that's pretty cool. Next song is Witch's Sabbath, and this one features two members of Obituary, which is vocals from John Tardy and the drumming of Donald Tardy. It's a pretty cool song because they add in these haunting organs. It gives it a different feel. It's a very dark and evil type of sound, and the lyrics are describing this type of ritual. I thought the song was reminiscent of a band like Merciful Fate or Venom. And then they have a song called Schizoid Platform. That was one of the singles I played the clip of. And that features some really cool gang vocals in the chorus. And then a 6-minute song called Aztec Elegance with a softer intro, clean singing, and the lyrics mention the blood sacrifice of the Aztecs. And it also has some heavier thrash parts, and they mention the term like apocalypto, which is a movie that came out not too long ago, or like 20 years ago. Then they have this another like apocalyptic theme song called Operation Annihilate with these sick guitar riffs. There was another song which I didn't really like. It's called Blood Syndicate, and it has like these clips of a woman who, let's just say, are not appropriate, and the kind of thing like you don't want to be playing on speakers, or you can't play it at work, or that kind of thing. So you know what I mean. But despite this, it's probably actually my favorite album of the week. It's just awesome old school thrash metal. My score is an 8.5 out of 10. If you like those old bands from the 80s, definitely check it out. I'm sure you will like this. Next is Rise of Kronos with the album Imperium. They are a German death thrash band, and they formed in 2021. So Imperium was released on October 11, 2024, just 2 months after their last album, Where the Gods Return, which was a re-recording of their debut, originally titled Where the Gods Divide. That was released under their previous band's name, Surface. I actually reviewed that on a previous episode, and I didn't actually realize it was a re-recording. But anyway, you can look for that if you want. So this album falls within the death metal genre. It kind of shows the band's signature style, often described as Olympic death metal, and that kind of suggests a blend of intensity and complexity in the music. Total runtime of this album is about 41 minutes. And the album is also self-released as the band wanted creative control. The music is technical and aggressive, and this has resonated very well with fans. The opening track is called Incorporate. It has some dark and evil sounds, and this goes into Arrival of Delusion, a song that's very fast and energetic with rapid-fire drum beats and big guitar riffs, reminiscent of both thrash and death. Vocals are heavy, aggressive, deep, and you can hear harmonics used in the guitar playing. Next is a song called Children of Leprosy. This one continues with their fast and heavy sound. This time, a focus more of an old school death metal sound. I thought it was reminiscent of Cannibal Corpse. And the next song was a little more atmospheric. It's called Separate the Sheep from the Goats. That was a clip I played. It starts with a short intro section, then it gets fast, heavy, aggressive. The vocals are intense. But what I like is you can understand what the vocalist is saying. Then a song called Know Thyself. It had more of a mid-paced rhythm, some thicker sounds in the guitars. There were some awesome drum rolls in this song. And then after that is a song proclaiming Empery. And this one had slower, more atmospheric sound with the drum beat that builds up. And this one also had a classic thrash type of sound. They also had a song called Legio Titanium, and I felt this one had a little bit more melody than some of the others, and this was leaning towards thrash metal. Then they have an instrumental called Imperial with some awesome guitar sounds and powerful drumming, and that came together to create these epic melodies. They follow this up with a whirlwind of riffs on the song Forthcoming Void. Then they have a song that had more of this menacing tone, and that was called The Offering. And then I thought that song had more of a dark and evil sound. They go full speed ahead with the track The Hour of Departure with this sandstorm of sick guitar riffs. Then they give you some thick and beefy riffs on the next track, Rope of Sand. This one had a very dark and evil sound. And they end the album with some old school death metal on the track Despoiler of Words. So overall, pretty cool album. If you're a fan of some old school thrash and death, they give you what you expect. My score is an 8 out of 10. Just a very good death and thrash metal album. Nothing more, nothing less. Definitely check it out. Next is Cool World by Chat Pile. This was released on October 11, 2024. The band's highly anticipated second studio album following their debut, God's Country, from 2022. The album takes its name from the 1992 movie of the same name called Cool World.
My world.
You're not in Kansas anymore.
So vocalist Ray Bush describes the album as addressing disasters both at home and abroad and how these issues are connected with each other. He references a quote from Voltaire about the cost of sugar in America, while at the same time highlighting themes of oppression and despair throughout the tracks. The album also showcases an evolution in Chat Pile's sound, blending elements of metal and noise rock with more melodic structures. So let me talk about some of the tracks. I Am Dog Now was one of the lead singles with heavy instrumentation and introspective lyrics, and the track reminded me of some early 90s grunge mixed with extreme metal and hardcore, both heavy and atmospheric. Shame is a track that balances melody with deeper themes, showcasing some of the band's best songwriting, and I thought it reminded me of some of that early 80s post-punk and goth, but with elements of extreme metal as well. And this had thicker, cleaner vocals and some alternative 90s vibes. Frownland has some thick bass guitar playing and some atmospheric sounds in the background, elements of alternative rock on this song as well. Funny Man is about the effects of war with powerful imagery and dynamic instrumentation. And this one had some big and epic guitar chords and some pounding drums. Then there was a 6.5-minute track called Camcorder. Had some really heavy, sludgy guitar riffs. Then a song called Tape that reminded me of some early Nirvana, but with a sound that was more metal and hardcore. And the song had a mix of clean guitars and distorted ones with elements of grunge and alternative. The vocals sounded very demented. The New World features intense guitars and a fast pace, and this captures the band's live energy. No Way Out closes the album, and this one has haunting lyrics about shattered dreams and hopelessness. And this song features some thick bass guitars, some atmospheric sounds, and that creates these dark and eerie soundscapes. It's not my favorite album of the week, but I think it's the most unique band that I'm covering today. My score is an 8 out of 10. I think if you're looking for something that's very different, it doesn't sound like anything else I've ever heard before, I definitely think you should check this out. Next is Cleanbreak with We Are the Fire. This is a heavy metal band featuring vocalist James Durbin and guitarist Mike Flint. So the album officially dropped on October 11, 2024, and this has lots of classic metal influences. It's their second album. I remember the first one, I think it was a few years ago. I enjoyed listening to it. James Durbin is known for being in both Quiet Riot, and he was a contestant on American Idol. He also has his own band called Durbin. I believe they released an album this year. And Mike Flint is from the band Riot V. And the band also features two members from Striper. So the opening track is called Warrior's Anthem, and this is a melodic rocker. It has both the guitars and the keyboards in the forefront. James Durbin has some big vocals, and the next song is called Never Gone. This one has a darker tone with a more of an epic sound. This is one of those fist-pumping types of songs. The next song is called Unbreakable. This one's a little heavier. I thought it sounded more like classic heavy metal from the 80s, and then there was a song called Can't Lose Hope, and this one had the same type of sound. It probably reminded me of something along the lines of Dokken from the 80s. After this was a song called Breathless. This was where it had more of that epic type of sound, maybe leaning towards power metal, almost like a Middle Eastern or Egyptian type of sound. And this song had more keyboards in the forefront. Then there was a song called Deal With Yourself, and this was just some classic heavy metal with those galloping rhythms that were used by bands in the 80s. After this was a ballad called Love Again. I found this one to be interesting because the keyboards in the intro reminded me of some classic Deep Purple. I like James's vocals on this one. They were somewhat reminiscent of Rob Halford when he sings a typical ballad in Judas Priest. Then there was a song called Bide Our Time with more of those big and epic keyboards, and that gave it more of a fantasy video game type of sound. This was another epic sounding power ballad. Then they bring back the classic heavy metal with a song called Start to Breathe, and this was or had more of those 80s inspired guitar riffs, and the song also has some laid back melodic sections as well. After this is the title track, which is probably one of the heaviest songs on the album, with some guitar riffs that were closer to either thrash or speed metal, maybe something along the lines of Judas Priest's Painkiller, but they didn't lose any of the melody. They also incorporated more of those keyboard sounds on this track. And the last track is called Resilience in Our Souls. This is one of the heavier tracks in the album with some big, chunky, and beefy guitar riffs. And this one also had some heavier vocals by James Durbin, where he delivers the vocals in a darker tone. He also emulates Rob Halford with some higher pitched screams in this track. Overall, better than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be kind of generic, but it's actually pretty good. It grew on me after the second listen, so I'm going to give this one another 8 out of 10. I think if you're somebody who likes classic heavy metal, but also melodic heavy rock, it seems to blend those two genres. The last band I want to talk about is House of Lords, and they released their 12th studio album called Full Tilt Overdrive, released on October 11, 2024 through Frontiers Music SRL. This continues the band's legacy in the hard rock genre. It showcases their signature sound characterized by strong hooks and powerful melodies. It was produced by the band's frontman James Christian and keyboardist Mark Mangold. And they kept the same formula that has defined their sound over the years. So this album is just a hard rock album, lots of melodies, some big vocals with memorable hooks, and lots of big guitars. The current lineup includes James Christian on vocals, Jimmy Bell on guitar, Mark Mangold on keyboards, and Johan Kohlerberg on drums. This lineup has been consistent since their previous album, Saints and Sinners, and the opening track is called Crowded Room. This one has some pretty heavy guitar riffs that kind of straddles the line between hard rock and heavy metal, but the overall sound was this big arena rock type of sound. After this is a song called Bad Karma, and the opening riff reminds me of the band Poison from the late 80s, that type of sound. It's a big song that evokes sounds of driving down the LA Sun Strip with a car in the convertible with the hood down in the 80s, like that type of thing. After this is a song called Cry the Wicked. This one has some of those big guitar riffs and wailing guitars. Then there was the title track that had more of an AC/DC type of sound, but the only difference was there were more keyboards. In the middle of the song is an acoustic ballad called Taking the Fall, and this one had a southern rock type of sound. It reminded me of either Leonard Skinner or Bad Company. Then there was a song called You're Cursed, which starts with a short intro with a dark and ominous voice. It sounds like a clip from an old horror movie, and the song had some of that 80s glam metal sound as well. After this was a track called Not the Enemy. This one was a little weird. It sounded almost like some 90s industrial music at first, but the song was a laid-back rocker. After this was a track called Don't Want to Say Goodbye, which is just another keyboard-heavy rocker. And it was a laid-back track, maybe reminiscent of one of those emotional Bon Jovi types of ballads. Then there was a song called Still Believe, which had some harder rocking guitar riffs and also very reminiscent of the glam metal of the 80s. Then there's a track called State of Emergency, which is another laid-back type of song, and had some keyboards in the intro and some ambient sounds, but they mixed this with those big hard rock guitar chords and it sounded like a pretty good arena rocker. The last track is called Castles High. It's a 9.5 minute song that starts off with some haunted house sounds and some wolves howling. It had lots of those Deep Purple style keyboards and big guitar chords. I like the keyboard solo that comes in around the middle of the song. This one is not too bad. It was like a mix of classic hard rock such as Deep Purple, but with the big hair metal of the late 80s sound like Poison and Bon Jovi, something along those lines. I'm going to give this one 7.5 out of 10. It's not quite an 8. Maybe if I spent more time with it, it might go up, but that's what it is, and it is what it is. Check out last week's episode of New Metal Releases for October 4th, 2024. Thanks for watching. Please give this video a like. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I'll do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.